Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Nancy Matthews with Columbus, and I'll be your MC for this session. We started the call by putting everybody on mute, but if you have any questions during today's presentation, just go ahead and put them in the little upper right-hand corner of the question box. At the end, we'll have time for a Q&A. If you're interested in submitting for CPE, at the end of the session, you'll have a survey. Go ahead and fill out that survey and say you want CPE. We'll send it to you. And FYI, there will be up to 5 hours of CPE for today, not 4. Finally, we're recording this session. We'll send a link within an hour after the broadcast. So now I'm excited to introduce to you our presenter for today, Spring Walker, for an overview of what's new in Dynamics GP 18.2. Spring, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our What's New in Dynamics 18.2, also called the October 2019 release. So I have been consulting with Columbus US for a while now, and consulting in general for 25 years. I've been using GP since I was a client in 95, and in DOS-based GPA accounting, so long time. And of course, I've been consulting since 2001. So excited to get into the product here and show you some of the new features that are out there that may make you want to upgrade. So this is really just our table of contents, so later on, if you're looking at the slide deck, you'd be able to quickly find things. There's a lot of good information in here. All right, so we'll dive right in with the general information. So Dynamics GP, the new version is just Microsoft Dynamics GP. We're calling it 18.2, but they are dropping off the numbers, the version names as part of the name. Now it's just Dynamics GP. And not to worry, that's not a bad thing. It's just moving to the modern life cycle and naming conventions of the other Microsoft products. No new keys are required if you're on GP 2018. When you do your year-end updates, it would just move you right to the 2018 R2, and then as the year-end update for that would move you to the 18.2. And of course, the next release that'll be out later this year is the 18.3, which we're all excited about. We're going to give a preview of a few of those potential new features here at the end. So some of the system requirements that you would need in case you do want to upgrade, you would need to have your Windows server on 2012, although 2016 is recommended. SQL Server needs to be 2014, although 2017 is recommended. Office 2013 would work, but Office 2016 is also recommended. And of course, at least Windows 7 for the client installations. You can see the hardware requirements as well, 2 core processors at 2.4 gigahertz at least, and 16 gigs of RAM are recommended. And then at least 150 gigs of disk space. So we'll have this slide available for you for later in case you want these details. And of course, the amazing team here at Columbus would be happy to help you with the upgrades and any requirements gathering that you may need. Collectively as a team, we have over 765 years of combined Dynamics GP experience. So quite a great team here. This is just a more detailed look at those client requirements. Again, this would be available in the slide deck later if you need it. And this would be for the server itself. All right, now how to get there. Depending on what version of GP you're on, there's not always a direct path from the version you're on to the new. So you can see that if you needed to upgrade from 2013, for example, they would need to upgrade to 2015 first and then jump over. So there's a path to get you there. It just may need another version in between to get you there. But don't worry, we can help you with that process. All right, so the new Dynamics GP life cycle, there is a link to that here, but beginning with that October 2019 release, Dynamics GP would follow the modern life cycle. So what that means is continuous support and servicing, including bug fixes, new features, and the latest tax updates. No support end date is listed, and it's replaced with an update schedule. So this updated schedule that's out there right now extends past the 2023 mainstream support end date. So they will be putting out new features and supporting them for quite a while. Here's some additional information about that. For anyone who is on an older version, when things will begin to not be supported. So if you're on GP 2010, you know, it's already in its extended life cycle or extended support cycle, and that would be ending this October. 2013 would have that extended support until 4/11 of 2023 and so forth. So depending on what version you're on, you'd want to make sure that you're not falling out of at least those extended supports. And if you are on payroll, of course, and need those tax updates, remember that the tax updates will be ceasing for 2015, or I guess they already did in April. So you would need to go ahead and upgrade if you want to be able to get those tax updates at the end of the year. All right, so the Dynamics GP October 2019 release, it's time to get excited about all these new features and reasons to upgrade. So we're calling it Dynamics GP 18.2, but as I mentioned, when you actually launch the program, it'll just say Dynamics GP. Some of the features in this Dynamics GP release are the features you requested. So I've included a link here so that you can be part of the process and be able to request what you really want to see in those next releases. There are a couple of these ones that are coming up that are actually from suggestions. So they're looking at this, you can vote on which ones you want, and it is a big help to the rest of the community. The focus has been on the 4 pillar areas for GP. So the top features requested by the customers, as well as financial enhancements, the system enhancements, and they're always adding to the workflow functionality. And of course, that's especially helpful right now as we're all moving to this more digital and remote world. So let's dive right into some of these new features. As we said, we've got those 4 pillar areas. The financial purchasing area has quite a few new features here, and I've got them all listed individually, but I'm going to skip right to where I'm showing you each one individually. So first one here, this is considered a financial enhancement, but it's really for the payables module. So there's a new option to set up for very long descriptions, even up to 200 characters. And you have to enable it first and set up. And then you can see that long description in the transaction entry screen whenever you're entering vouchers. In the Zoom, if you're looking at posted transactions, and also in the enquiry screens. You can also see it printed out as an option on some of the check formats as well. And of course, the long description does not post to the general ledger. You won't see that in your financial account transaction smart lists. You'll still just see the regular descriptions there. But anywhere in AP that you need to pull it on one of the reports, you should be able to do so. So that's nice for those of us who needed just a few more characters in our descriptions. Also, there is an expanded view of the fiscal period setup screen, so that you can see it all in one screen without scrolling up and down. So, you know, it's the little things sometimes that can make a difference in your day. So this just is one less click to not have to scroll down when you're going to those periods later in the year. We also can now see the user who posted for the journal entry inquiries. So when you go to look at the journal entry, there's field is now available, the user who posted, and you can see who that was if there's any question about it. they're always adding new features and new places that we can attach documents within GP. Again, more of this remote workplace and modern world where we can attach everything within the system and not go to those file cabinets or reach out to other coworkers as much is great. So most recently here, they've added this big blue paperclip, the attach paperclip, to the bank transaction entry, the bank deposit entry, and the bank deposit entry and transaction entry zooms. So that means that even after you've posted, if you're zooming back in just to review or look at something that's already done, you can still attach a document there, which is great because sometimes we forget before we post. So anyway, you can attach documents now at any point in that banking process for those transactions. All right, back over to payables. There's now a visual cue for the EFT vendors when you're in the edit payment batch screen. So one of the things that changed in version 18 was changing everything to the edit payment. So if you're on an older version, this would be your edit check batch. And you can see here that it puts a little envelope next to the vendor if they are set up with EFT information. So that can help you determine who needs to go in your EFT batch, or maybe who you don't want to include in your regular batch because you're going to do an EFT batch later. So again, it's just nice to have that information without trying to remember or have notes about it somewhere. All right, so the check number also shows in the Apply Sales Documents screen now. So you can actually see, instead of just this payment number, what the check number was for that customer. So in case there were multiples or there's some confusion, maybe there's similar amounts, it makes it easy to be able to see that information. Okay, so in payroll, there is now an option to not include the additional withholding. So in the payroll billed checks window, you can now specify if the check must include additional federal, state, or local taxes. The fields are selected by default to retain existing functionality. So by default, they will be checked, but if you need to uncheck them, if you didn't want them included for this particular run for some reason, maybe it's a bonus check or something like that, then you could uncheck those and build your batch. So nice to have that feature there and not have to go mess with the cards in order to accommodate. All right, also the payroll integration to payables has been enhanced. So you can now see the remit to address and be able to change that when creating the invoice from payroll. Also, there's a new edit list report that's available in the posting setup screen. So you can turn that on and be able to see a posting journal whenever those go across, or I'm sorry, an edit list before you post in case you want to see what's going to happen when those go across. There is a deduction benefit quick assignment functionality that's been enhanced as well. You can now bulk assign codes to one or more employees for deductions, benefits, miscellaneous benefits, retirement benefits, life insurance, or health insurance. You would just go to the quick code assignment window from the deduction setup window, and then you can mark all or unmark all, or individually mark the employees you want to assign the code to. And then of course you would click this update button at the top to go ahead and assign those to the employees. So also you can now include inactive records for the HR benefits and deductions in the lookups. So if you click on your blue view bar when you're doing a lookup in HR, in any of those HR screens, you'll see this option and you can choose to exclude the inactive benefits, and then you can also choose to set that as your default view. So this is very similar to how you can exclude inactive customers or vendors. It's the same sort of thing. Now you can do that on the benefits as well. So employment history, the reason for change has been assigned for all dates. So the reason field now captures the reason for change to the employee's information when the hire date, the adjusted hire date, or the last day worked fields are entered or edited in the employee maintenance window. The same also applies if the HR status is updated on the employee HR maintenance window that modifies those dates. The reasons and dates are then saved to the employment history for the employee. So before there were just certain fields that were triggered this history, and now all the date fields will trigger it. So that's great. Also now the payroll pay statements can be reprinted by audit code. So, you know, if you've ever tried to go in and reprint paychecks and had to do them one by one, this is a wonderful, wonderful addition to be able to reprint an entire check run. So if somebody didn't notice that the checks didn't get put in the printer or something like that, now you can reprint that entire check run. All right, so there's been a lot of new additions to the workflow functionality as well. They have added the user security workflow as well as a user workflow, so that people can approve setting up new users or changing the security for users. Also the same thing with security roles or tasks being changed. And you can import and export the workflows. The change approver for active workflow tasks addition is big if if you've ever worked with workflow before and needed to change who the approver was in the middle. Being able to do this without inactivating the workflow and reactivating it is huge. So changing the approver was definitely a great addition. And then the vendor approval workflow can submit on hold or the doc attach. So anyway, great additions to that workflow functionality. They've also added new administration workflows. So these are some of those security ones that I was mentioning, how you can edit or you can add a workflow to edit or add security or users or modifying the security roles or tasks. You can now, of course, import and export the workflows. It'll create a .json file, and then you could copy it to another workflow or another company rather than trying to jot down your notes. When you import an exported workflow, you'll need to specify the name of the new workflow. And if you need to import a new workflow, the type must match. After the import, you can set up the workflow approvers and all the message options, but it can give you a start with those approval levels and things like that. Again, being able to change that approver for the active tasks was huge for me. In the new edit workflow approver window, the manager of that workflow can modify who a task is assigned to. So you'd have to be the manager of the workflow to do this, but at least you can get in and change it. Those workflow managers can delegate workflow tasks, and the SA account can also delegate the workflow tasks. So that gives you the ability to make sure things can get handled. The vendor approval enhancement. So the vendor approvals workflows changed where you can submit the workflow if the vendor's hold status changes or when the document attached status is updated for the vendor. So if it's just a new option for the workflow, for the vendor approvals that they could be based on those things. All right, so the system enhancements, the compatibility with the SQL Server 2019 and Windows Server 2018 were big for the IT folks. Compatibility with Office 2019. They've added some date options in our smart lists. We can sort the companies in user access, and there's a search option in there as well. And we can filter inactive users in the user access setup, which is really nice if you have a lot of old inactive users that might be out there. And also you can now have more than 32 report options in a report group. So for those of us that had a lot in their report groups, you can now have even more. So this is the system enhancement for the smart list. They've added some new date options. So if you click that drop down in a date option where for the value, there are some new options in there like next period. So if the system date is set to November 11th, 2019, prior month would set all values from October 1st through the 31st. Prior period would be the values from the first day of the previous period to the last day based on the period setup. And then they've added the next month, which would be all values from December 1st to 31st if we were in November, or the next period would be the same thing if our fiscal periods were the same as the calendar year. But it's nice to have these options in here. Of course, if you use these date options rather than keying in a date manually, then the next time you run the report, if you're still looking for next month or last month, then you won't have to go in and change that date. So being able to sort the companies and the user access setup. So in my little example here, it wasn't a big deal because I only have a couple of companies, but if you have many companies and databases set up, this can be a big deal to be able to find your companies quickly and not scroll up and down to find them in the order they were originally created. So you can also type in the search to find by the company name. You can filter inactive users as well in the user access setup here. So if you have many users and a lot of them are inactive, it's nice to be able to filter them out. Again, if you have a lot of reports that you needed in your financial or payables groups, any of your report groups, you can now add more than 32. So if you have those large report groups and needed to make them a little bit larger, you can have fun with that now. All right, so these were some top feature requests that got included. So this is why you want to go out there and put in those features, suggest what you can, because they are listening. And most likely, if you are wishing you had that feature when you're in there working every day, a lot of the other people in our GP community would probably feel the same way. So some quick examples of that, and we'll go through the screens, but the copy report options and being able to filter items in a item stock inquiry by date, excluding inactive items on the price list, and minimizing transactions when the go-to is selected for a PO that exists. Saving settings for display new PO per user. Inactive fields added to the smart list. Showing user ID in the item master table so you can see who's adding those. Pasting from Excel in the web client. So those of that are using the web client, I'm sure we're really excited to be able to paste in those journal entries now. And then of course the history drop down defaults to the most recent year. So sometimes it's the little things. So the copy report option, if you need to copy an option from another report of something similar and you just want to be able to make one change, you can now copy it and then just make those quick changes like doing a save as. So great way to utilize what you already have rather than having to recreate it. All right, you can also filter the item stock inquiry by date. So they've just added this field here where you can put in your date range and be able to see that restricted list of transactions rather than seeing everything. We know sometimes that can, it can make the screen take a while to populate if the date's wide open. So this can help it be a little more responsive. And then also just so you can see and be able to research a little better. All right, so exclude inactive items on the price list. So this is just if you're running that price list report, you can now choose to exclude or the discontinued or inactive items. You can also minimize transactions when go-to is selected for a PO that exists. So when you're prompted and you're entering in a new voucher and you're prompted that a PO exists for that vendor, if you click the go-to, it will actually return to the transaction to post or delete. So it will stay open with the transaction entered for you. You can now specify you have a save setting for how to show the new POs. You can now specify what happens when the new PO is created. You can show the message that the new purchase orders have been created so the user can open the purchase order list. You cannot show the message and just open the purchase order list, or you cannot show the message and not display the purchase order list. So you can see these options down below, and that you can choose which one fits the way you like to work the best. All right, so on our smart list here, the new field inactive was added to the default item smart list. So you'll now see inactive as a field there, and you can add it to other smart list favorites if you want, if you had existing favorites, but they have added it to the default. You can also see the user ID in the item master table now, and they've pulled it into the smart list. They are now writing the user ID to the item record when added or updated, so that you can add it in. So it just says user ID, but that would be basically the last person to change it. So if it had been updated recently, you'd be able to tell who may have done that change. So again, for those of us that are in the web client, you can now insert rows from Excel into the journal entry screen. So this is a big, big win for those that are using the web client. We've had this for a while in the desktop version, but the web client was anxiously waiting for it. All right, so those were all the big features, and now these are just a few of the unknown or known issues, and and potential new features now that would be coming up with October 2020 and 18.3. So again, these are just potential. These are not 100% confirmed, but these are what we are expecting to be in the next release. So the first one is for reporting. You can maximize GP reports when printing to the screen. So normally when you print something to the screen, it comes out kind of small and you have to maximize it and pull it apart so you can see all the data. And now it can maximize automatically. And I'm not sure exactly how it'll work, whether it'll remember our setting like the collapsed and expanded distributions work in the financial and payables area, or whether it will be a setting. Not sure yet, but it will allow us to open those reports maximized, which will be great. We also have some 1099 updates. So the ability to use the 1099 type as a selection criteria and to be able to add the DBA name field is huge. And so this had a lot, I think was one of the ones that was requested by our users. So, don't forget, go out there and request those features that you want because they are listening. This is one that I think is also had been called the NEC update for non-employee compensation. So this would affect the 1099 form as well as the 1099 screen to be able to print and process those 1099s. Also on the GL Reconcile screen, so in the past you would have to reconcile each year individually. So say you ran the account modifier, for example, you'd have to go in and reconcile for years. and do start with history and reconcile each year individually, which, you know, somebody who's been on the system for 15 years could take a couple of minutes. Now we can reconcile all years together. So again, not sure whether we'll have a range there or whether it'll be a check mark or what, but we are really excited to have that feature come. It's one of those things that doesn't happen that often, but when it does and you're individually reconciling 20 years of data, you think, why isn't there a button? Also, they've added some more new fields to payables. So payables transaction entry, we're going to have some new user-defined fields. We've got that really long description added in the last version, and now we're going to have some new user-defined fields. I'm not sure how they'll look. I'm assuming it'll be like a user-defined 1 and 2 sort of thing that we'll have available on our transaction entry screen where we enter our vouchers, but I'm not sure how that'll look and where the setup will be. I would assume in the payables setup area. And then finally, here's the big one, and I am so excited about this. I really hope this one does come out, and I can't wait to see how it works. I'm assuming it's going to be fairly similar to the journal entry copy and paste functionality that we currently do, but yes, you heard it here. Payables, distributions, and possibly the entire entry will be able to be pasted in. You'll be able to grab something from Excel, format it in a certain way, and paste it into those vouchers. We have been asking for this and hoping for this for a long time, so I am so excited to see how this is going to work and to get to play with it when it comes out. So that one's probably the one I'm most excited about, but I really think these are all great. And as I said, they did come, a lot of these from your requests and suggestions. So please do go out and suggest when you can. This is a link to the site, and it'll be included in the slides, but you can also get to it on the experiencedynamics.com, and you can see you would select Dynamics GP and then suggest a new idea, and then you can put in what your idea might be, and you might be like the person who suggested the new fields for the 1099s, or that suggested the copy and paste functionality for AP. They may go ahead and turn that into the next new feature. And so anyway, great thing to be able to go out there and suggest those ideas. And you can also vote on other ideas that people in the community have put out there. So if you see something that you think, you know, would be a great new addition, go ahead and vote for it. That's how they know that we want these things. So in closing, if you do need any GP upgrade help, you can email our experts for upgrade assistance at us-gpupgrades@columbusglobal.com. And thank you so much for spending this time looking at the exciting enhancements included with Dynamics GP, the October 2019 release. And did we have any questions? Nancy, did you see any?
Sorry, I was on mute. First of all, we do have some questions, and if anybody has questions, go ahead and put them in the question box. I want to apologize. We had some huge technical issues, and I was running the PowerPoint, and trust me, it was hard to keep up. So if it seemed herky-jerky, blame it on me, not Spring. Okay, first question, Spring, is when a document is attached, where is it going? Is there a specific location defined on the network?
Great question. So the new doc attach feature that they implemented a couple of versions ago works differently than the old OLE notes that we were used to. So there's not a file location the way that it used to be. It's stored in the SQL tables. So there is a setup. You do have to turn it on. It's under the company setup area, and it's just called doc attach or document attach. And you just have to check a box to say, turn it on to start using it, and then you can put a folder where they go temporarily, but they're not stored in a folder anymore. So they're safe, they're backed up every night in your SQL backups. And the only thing I would recommend is if you're new to the doc attach, just let IT know if you're going to be putting a lot of documents out there, so that they can expect that that growth in the database.
Okay,
Good.
another question.
Mhm.
Are you able to attach documents in AP and AR or only in the bank transactions?
Good question. You are absolutely able to attach an AP and AR. Those were just existing before this latest release. But absolutely, you can attach AP, AR in the vendors and customers, as well as the transactions, and in the GL as well. So journal entries, you can attach documents.
Okay, next question. Somebody had to go on mute and missed the answer. On the AP long description, any chance that it would be included in the GL open or history tables in the future?
Good question. I don't know. Not that I've heard any rumors of, but you could always, even though it's not stored there, you could link it back in a Smart List Builder or Smart List Designer report if you need it in there, because it exists. So you would just have to link to the original transaction, and you could pull it into a Smart List. I would recommend that, and instead of waiting for them to do it, because we don't know when that might happen, when or if.
If you're already on 18, does it make sense to go to 18.2?
Yes, it's simply a year-end update that would move you to that next version, and it definitely has a few new features and keeps you on the latest and greatest. So, and it's not a big jump. It wasn't anything that that required a lot of additional preparation, I don't think. I think this was a smaller one than some of the historical ones if you were already on 18. But of course, check with the upgrade team, because they would be more, they would have more information about that.
How do you manage that people are not uploading huge attachments?
You can actually set a limit in that doc attach setup screen under the company setup and administration. You can set a max file size if you wanted to keep people from doing that, and otherwise you just sort of let them know what they can and can't do. But to the point, I have had clients that were uploading large PDFs and 20 to 30 of them per customer and things like that. So it just depends on what size you can get to, but it can be done, and without any real lags or anything. I didn't notice anything different when they were looking things up. It seemed to be still very responsive.
And while you're on attachments, they can be PDF or Excel, right?
PDF, Excel, Notepad, anything. I've never seen a restriction. Logos, various PNG or JPEG files. I've seen all sorts of things attached, and I have yet to see any limitation or any of them rejected.
We are currently on version 2016 and looking to upgrade later this year. Does the new version have the capability to easily reduce a purchase order amount as multiple invoices are received?
If you mean a tolerance, so that if you were, let's say you ordered 100 of something and you had gotten multiple invoices and there were 2 left of the quantity that still needed to be received, you can set a tolerance so that the PO would automatically close. I'm not sure if that was the question. I'm not sure I understood that one completely, but you can have multiple invoices against a PO, as many as it may take. You have to have received it first. The invoice must match a receiving when it comes to the POs, but as long as the purchase order is open, you can still keep receiving and then matching those invoices against it.
All right, I think I don't see any more questions. One person was asking for a copy of the webinar, and that should automatically be emailed to you this afternoon. But no more questions, Spring. So so that's going to conclude our webcast. Thank you everybody for coming, And the next webinar will start at noon, or I'm sorry, wait a minute, before I get on that. If you have a purchase order, personal service contract, as we do, our invoices, can we easily reduce that PO?
Okay, the trick when it's a service that I've used a lot, because there's not a great way to do it, is that I use the quantity as my dollar amount, and I make the dollar amount be $1, and that way I can easily cancel anything that's left or go over it if I need to. But that gives me the ability to receive partial, because otherwise if you had a service type item, you know, and you had a quantity of 1 and $20,000, for example, if you receive multiple invoices, it would try to close that PO. So I think that was the question. So the trick to that typically is try using the quantity as your dollar amount. So if you wanted a $20,000 invoice, try 20,000 as the quantity and $1 as the price. And that way, when you are receiving against it, it will leave it open.
Okay.
And you can easily adjust.
Good suggestion. So at the top of the hour will be the next GP users start getting value from Azure, presented by Chase Anderson. So thank you everybody for attending. And again, if you need CPE, go ahead and fill out the questionnaire at the end and send it in. And for each session, there's an hour CPE. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.